So I heard you want to start photography. So today I'm going to be teaching you the basics that you need to know to start taking good photos. My name is Joel and welcome back to the channel. So when we're talking about photography, honestly it's pretty easy, but first you need to know these three things: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. Now these are the three most important principles of photography. You can't just have two that are good and then one that's sort of iffy, because they all work together as one to make one good photo. Now, let's start with shutter speed. Now, shutter speed is the amount of time that your shutter opens on your camera, allowing light in and allowing your camera to actually see the image. Now, to put it simply, if you have a car driving by you that you want to take a picture of, you'll want a higher shutter speed to actually take a picture, to freeze it in its place, meaning that the higher shutter speed is giving your camera less time to actually take the picture. Whereas if you have a lower shutter speed, your camera is actually going to take longer to take the picture, which is really bad if you have movement happening. So for example, if your car is starting at point A and ends at point B, point A is which you're pressing the shutter and it's actually opening, and point B is when it's closing, when the picture is actually taken, then the amount of time that the car is actually traveled in between is also going to be blended into your picture. So here's an example of that. Now you can see that my shutter speed was way too low because you can see the movement of the car and the picture is all blurry, it's all messed up. But then once I changed it to a higher shutter speed, you can see that when I took the picture, I actually froze the car in time, and it looks like that the car's not even moving. Shutter speed is measured in seconds, and you'll see that your shutter speed options are usually 1 over a number. Let's say 1 over 500, which is what I took this picture at. So that means your camera is taking the picture at 1/500th of a second. But if you have a lower shutter speed, like 1 over 30, meaning 1/30th of a second, you're giving your camera more time to take the picture. Now, aperture is how wide you're opening your lens to let light actually come in, but it also changes your background. If you ever see those pictures where the subject of the picture is in focus, but the background is completely blurry, that means that they're shooting on an extremely low aperture. So if you want to take a picture like that, you're gonna have to lower your aperture, meaning you're opening the lens more, letting more light in. So you're gonna have to raise your shutter speed to take that picture faster. But if you want to take a picture of, let's say, a group of people, then having a lower aperture isn't good, because you're only gonna be able to focus on one subject most of the time. So what you'll want to do is raise your aperture so then you can get more of the image in focus. And the same thing also applies to landscapes. So you can see in this picture that because I had a higher aperture, not only is the foreground and the subject in focus, but the background is also focused as well. So you can see all the details in there. And finally, ISO. Now ISO is how sensitive your camera is to light. But to put it simply, raising your ISO is basically making your image brighter. But you also don't want to raise your ISO too high, because if it's too high, then that's when you'll start losing detail and your image becomes like grainy and stuff. So let's look at this picture for example. Now when I was taking this picture, I had the lowest aperture, so the background is blurry and I had to let a lot of light in because it was dark. And I also had a low shutter speed to open up the camera and give it more time to actually take the picture, which is letting more light in. But after all that, it was still too dark, so I had to raise my ISO to get the preferred look to my image. Now with higher end cameras, you can usually get up to a much higher ISO without losing a lot of detail in your image. So if you're just starting out, remember, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO are the three things that you need to know. And put this into practice, because the more you do it, the more naturally it'll come. So if you're taking a picture and you look at it and it's too dark, then you'll think, oh, I need to lower my aperture, or I need to raise my ISO, or stuff like that. So I hope you learned something today, and if you have any more questions, you can always DM me on Instagram and I'll try my best to get back to you. But other than that, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.